It's common for atheists and other philosophically minded folk to confuse the terms rational with logical. To a superficial thinker, the two words, logic and rationality, might seem interchangeable, but the meaning of these two concepts are really completely different. Um, and so, to explain the difference, I'm going to be going through an article or an essay that Fat Fist Fatty, who is a rational scientist, part of the Rational Scientific Method group on Facebook, I'm going to read through his essay, which explains in the luxury of great detail what the difference between rationality and logic is, because it is a big difference. So to begin, the word rational applies specifically to statements, which are the linguistic outputs of our thoughts. We say that a statement is rational when it meets all of the following criteria. 1. It does not reify concepts into objects, and it does not attempt to apply motion or action to concepts or to nothing. Now, this point is enormous, especially when applied in the context of mathematical physics, since mathematical physical theories, which aren't physical theories, but these mathematical inventions of charge, energy, um, waves, um, forces, fields, these concepts are routinely treated as objects and routinely cause and undergo motion themselves. So the majority of mathematical physics involving forces, the concept of forces, fields, charges, energy, anytime that someone tries to carry a charge or um, interact with a field or uh, transfer a force or transfer energy, they're trying to move a concept, an abstract thought. They're trying to move an abstract relationship that is invented by humans to describe the actions of objects. So really they're trying to move nothing. So be very careful about point number one because it happens all the time. Anytime that you hear about a concept being moved around or changing its location or causing other objects to move, such as the force of gravity causes the Earth to orbit the sun, if you hear that, that is an irrational explanation. It's no different from saying the Earth moves around the sun because the Earth moves around the sun. It moves because of force. It forces because of force. It moves because of motion. It's all saying the same thing. A force is just a concept of motion. It can't cause anything in reality. It is the description of motion to begin with. Moving on to point number two. Point number two. The statement can be visualized, illustrated, and can be put as a movie on the big screen without missing a single frame. Continuous frame to frame. No gaps in motion are missing, and all the objects can be visualized and illustrated. So this really is the test, the acid test, the proof positive to determine whether or not a mathematician is moving a concept or something physical, an object. If you ask them, oh, so electricity is when charge gets carried down the wire. or gravity is caused when a force interacts with an object. If this statement is rational, if what they're saying makes sense, then they should be able to illustrate this mysterious object. They should be able to illustrate exactly what they believe, exactly what their proposal is for this object. And this is why electrons and waves, electromagnetic waves, charges, forces, magnetic fields, gravitational fields. These are all just abstract concepts to describe the motion of objects in the universe. And the reason that these concepts grow into irrational religions is that they choose to take these concepts, like the field, like the charge, like the wave, and convert them into the physical mediating bodies that cause the motion in reality. It's no longer just a convenient construct of a description, of an abstract way to look at the motion. It's no longer just that. It becomes what is supposedly out there. It becomes what is supposedly real, what is supposedly physical. But to prove that it isn't, you need to only ask them to illustrate it. Because anything real, any object, has shape that can be visualized. Whether we can see it with our eyes, whether we can touch it with our hands, whether we can, look at it through a microscope, if it's real, it's going to have shape regardless of our sensory interaction with it, because shape is the only quality that is objective and external and independent of our sensory system. Shape relies on no observer. Shape relies on no relation other than the object to nothing. Shape is what is the only conceivable quality to differentiate something from nothing. So anything that exists must have shape, and therefore you can illustrate what you think it looks like. That's why point number 2 is so important. When a mathematician tells you that space-time is what's causing gravity, then you need only ask them, illustrate space-time from a bird's eye view. What does space-time look like if I was outside of space-time? What's the boundary, what's the shape of space-time look like? And when they fumble, when they take a few steps back and try to change the subject or tell you that your question is irrational, you know you've caught them. Moving on to point number 3. Every crucial term, every key term that is referenced can be unambiguously and used, can be defined unambiguously and used consistently. Now, this is important for the sake of communication. All concepts need to be defined unambiguously. This is why we always ask people, define what you mean by exist. Because people use that term, exist, for just one example, over a wide variety of contexts. And if you took all of those instances and you tried to determine the meaning to see if across contexts they were using that term consistently, you would find it means a whole number of things. People mean by exist, they mean that you can see it. They mean that you can touch it or detect it. Um, People will frequently tell you that the word exist just simply means to be. So they provide you with a synonym rather than an actual definition. Synonyms and circular definitions where they use a synonym or the exact same word within the definition, those don't communicate any meaning. They have no meaningful significance. They symbolize nothing. They symbolize confusion. So if you can't define your term without circularity, without ambiguity, or without clarity, by being unambiguous, then you're not communicating anything. And people will tell you when you try to define these words, like truth, the word truth needs to be defined. The word evidence needs to be defined. These are terms that people take for granted. And the conversation ends up going around in circles because people disagree on the definitions, but they have no way of evaluating and analyzing those definitions because they won't even provide them. They won't even provide unambiguous definitions because they're afraid that if they provide an unambiguous definition, if they tell you exactly what they mean, then they're open to contradiction. Once you define your term unambiguously with clarity and you say this is what I mean, this is how the word is going to be used across the entire scope of my presentation, then you open yourself up to contradiction. People are afraid of that. If you look at if, go to any physics textbook, ask them to define motion, ask them to define time, ask them to define energy. These key, crucial words, they'll tell you straight up that these words are primitive or that they're complicated, that they don't really have a definition. Or life even. Biology, the study of life. Go to any biologist and ask them to define the term life. What do they mean by living, by alive? They'll tell you either they don't know, it's complex, or they'll provide you with a list of criteria. A list where one or two of them might be present, the rest might not be. A list where individual criterion on the list can be instantly contradicted as not a good criterion for life. So they just give you a whole bunch to say, oh, well, that one only is sometimes, it only, reproduces. So they'll tell you life is something that reproduces. And you say, well, what if someone lives and dies without reproducing? Were they never alive? Oh, well, it's about metabolism. Or, oh, it's about DNA. It's about DNA. They'll give you a whole laundry list, but they'll never give you a rational, unambiguous, clear definition of what that verb to live means. So, crucial terms always need to be defined for the sake of communication alone. We can't communicate. We communicate nothing. It's meaningless. It's gibberish if we can't tell you exactly what our key terms mean. So, so clearly, what is rational has, without question, nothing to do with truth, absolutes, proof, or logic. Rational thought is 100%, without question, completely divorced from logical thought. They're in completely different categories. So what is logical thought? Logical thought is founded upon artificial, axiomatic rules. These are the axioms that are conceived by humans. Logical systems come in two forms, which are represented in either symbolic or contextual languages. They are only descriptive and never prescriptive or explanatory. They cannot prescribe or explain reality. This means that as a language, logic, proof, truth, etc., deals exclusively with concepts and never with objects. Hence, logic can never have any explanatory power. Logic can never be used to explain why natural phenomena happen a certain way because it deals with concepts, verbs and adverbs, not objects, which are the nouns of reality. So logic has to do with syllogisms. The, the axiom is first invented or assumed to be true, to be the case. And then from there, we have premises that are also assumed. And the premises have to essentially be restated within the conclusion in a different arrangement. A logical conclusion, the word, when we say that something is a logical conclusion, that you've come to a logical conclusion, what we mean by logical is that your conclusion is a restatement of the premises. If I say, all bachelors are unmarried men, Bob is a bachelor. Therefore, Bob is an unmarried man. All that we've done in that conclusion, because the conclusion, the logical conclusion is Bob is an unmarried man. All that we've done is restate the premises. Albeit we've rearranged how we're saying it. Instead of saying Bob is a bachelor, we've just rearranged the sounds to say Bob is an unmarried man. Because we already assumed in the first premise that unmarried man equals bachelor. Same concept. It means the same thing. That's what logic does. Makes two things equal. It assumes some axiom, A equals A. And then by the conclusion, we've just rearranged the premises. That's all that logic does for us. Logic is only descriptive. It can only describe the subjective and opinionated observations that a human has made through his physically limited sensory system. This is why logic is 100% divorced from reality. Logical thought is also predicated, rational thought is predicated upon reality. Mother Nature's realm, which can only be critically reasoned by humans. Rationality is not based on artificial axiomatic rules or any systems of derivation, the way that logic is. It is based on the realization that the universe consists of either something, which has shape, or nothing, that which doesn't. There is no conceivable middle ground between shape and no shape, or any other option, ever. This is reality, and this is what the word rational is predicated upon. What is rational is not subject to someone's opinion. This is the objective criterion demanded by reality, Mother Nature's realm. Rationality is necessarily predicated upon objectivity, without the injection of opinions of human observers, Otherwise, it will degrade to an issue of ordinary speech, religion, opinion, or the symbolic, logical, religious sect known as mathematical physics, which is 100% dependent upon the subjectively biased observations, opinions, and descriptions of humans. Not a single rational explanation can be offered by any discipline based on logic. If somebody claims that their God theory is rational, then this is what this means. They had better know what they're talking about. If they cannot visualize, illustrate their own theory, make a movie out of it, then they have absolutely no clue what they're talking about. They do not have a rational explanation by any stretch of the imagination. For example, a God theory would have to show in frame number 1 of the movie God with his magic wand existing in nothing. In other words, no space, no matter, no void. Then in frame number 2 and the later frames, the movie would have to show how God creates space. We cannot just have space magically appear in frame number 2 that shows no relationship. How did God do it? Similarly, in, say, frame 100, the movie would have to show how God created the first little bit of matter. It is irrational to just have matter appear out of nothing in frame 100 when it didn't even exist in frame 99. The movie is supposed to explain all of these issues by showing how no shape can surreptitiously acquire length, width, and height and turn into shape, form, with internal structure. An irrational explanation consists of a scene that cannot be visualized or imagined. An irrational explanation is one where the proponent cannot illustrate or convert it into a movie, where the proponent doesn't even understand the words coming out of their mouth. And that is an overview of the difference between rationality and logic. Thank you for listening.